Hey, what's going on, guys? It's your boy, Nerd Mode On, and welcome to episode 14 of Battle Reports, a video series where I'll be going over a particular weapon in Battlefield 1 and breaking down the statistics of the weapon to provide you guys with a better idea of how the weapon will perform on the battlefield. So for today's episode, we're actually going to be taking a look at the Hellriegel 1915. Now, of course, in real life, it's more commonly known as the Hellriegel M1915. Now, some of you guys might be questioning what the M actually stands for. Now, of course, this is actually a very interesting thing considering that the M can stand for the mark of the weapon, or it can also stand for the year that the military acquired the rights to the weapon. Now, just in case you guys are not very familiar with this weapon, let's briefly talk about the historical relevance of this particular weapon during this period. The Hellriegel M1915 was an Austro-Hungarian water-cooled heavy machine gun that was produced during World War I. This weapon was only produced in very limited prototype numbers though. The submachine gun could be fed from a standard box magazine or from a large drum magazine which was not actually connected to the weapon and instead fed from cartridges through a flexible chute. Oddly enough, the usual appearance of this drum magazine has led many people to assume it is belt fed. However, this is not the case with the rounds being unconnected from one another. Unfortunately, little is known about this weapon since it did not progress from the prototype stage of development. Now, with a brief excerpt of the history of this particular weapon, let's transfer over to the variant system and discuss what type of variants are available for this weapon. The two available variants for the Hellriegel are the Hellriegel 1915 Factory as well as the Hellriegel 1915 Defensive. Since we have uncovered the two available variants, let's break down what each variant does in respect to the weapon that it has been attached to. For starters, we have the factory variant, which is considered to be lightweight, which allows it to recover faster from recoil, thus making it more accurate. And last but certainly not least, we have the defensive variant, which provides the user with the benefit of it having a 120 round drum magazine, which provides the user with more ammunition to fire down range. In addition, it has been provided with a bipod for increased stability when deployed on appropriate surfaces. Because of these improvements, this weapon has slightly more recoil compared to the factory variant. Now that we've had the opportunity to further break down the variant system, let's move over to the weapon statistics since this is the most prominent information that you as a player will run into while utilizing this weapon. It is worth noting that we'll only be covering the information that is constant between all variants. As you may have been able to notice, each variant slightly changes some statistics depending on which variant the user has selected. Starting things off, the Hellriegel has a rounds per minute that clocks in at 650. Now this value is actually comparable to the real life counterpart considering that the Hellriegel in real life had a rounds per minute that ranged anywhere from 550 upwards of 650 rounds per minute. Now this heavy submachine gun actually had a velocity that clocked in at 380 meters per second. Now, while this value isn't going to stun many of you guys, considering that this is actually comparable to some of the other competitive weapons in this particular category, this definitely does mean that it's going to be fairly effective at players that are in close to medium ranges. Now, transferring over to the damage model, you guys will notice that this weapon does a maximum of 23 damage up until 11 meters. Now, after 11 meters, you're going to notice a gradual decline of the overall damage being outputted at range. And once you hit 43 meters, you're going to be doing a minimum of 13.5 damage per round. Now to put this into layman's terms, all this really means is that you're going to need anywhere from 3 to 8 rounds to down an individual player. Now with a weapon of this configuration, it is highly recommended to attempt a couple a few headshots in there, considering that it will decrease your time to kill, thus saving you ammunition in your drum magazine. Now moving right along, the Hellriegel actually has the ability to have 2 different drum magazine capacities. If you decide to go with the factory variant, you'll be granted with 60 rounds in your drum magazine. Likewise, if you happen to opt for the defensive variant, you'll be granted with 120 rounds in your drum magazine. Regardless, at one point or another, you're going to be forced to have to reload this weapon. Now in any case, if you happen to leave at least 1 round left in the drum magazine, you'll then be granted with a short reload that clocks in at 3.75 seconds. However, if you happen to expel all of the ammunition available in your drum magazine, you'll then be granted with a long reload that clocks in at 4.5 seconds. Unfortunately, with the current implementation of the customization system in Battlefield 1, this does limit your options when it comes to customizing this weapon to be retrofitted for the type of playstyle that you are aiming to achieve. In previous Battlefield titles, you had the ability to customize your weapon depending on which type of playstyle that you wish to fulfill. With that being said, DICE has opted to go with more of a simplistic route, considering that the customization is now tied to the variant system, so this does limit your ability to make the weapon feel unique on the battlefield. Now in Battlefield 1, submachine guns have been relegated to close quarters combat. This is where the weapon will excel due to the high rate of fire that the weapon has been granted. Now, while these weapons will struggle to outperform shotguns in many cases, this does not necessarily mean that they're going to struggle to outperform weapons like self-loading rifles and/or sniper rifles. Furthermore, if you happen to find somebody in close quarters combat that is not utilizing a shotgun or a weapon that is comparable to the Hellriegel, then of course you're going to notice in many cases that you're going to be gunning them down in quick succession. Now, as we previously brought to light, you're definitely not going to want to try to use the Hellriegel at medium and long range, considering that it's not designated for that specific range, and of course other weapons like self-loading rifles and/or sniper rifles are going to perform far better at those distances. Now, the Hellriegel 1915 is a very interesting weapon in Battlefield 1, considering that it's the level 10 unlock for the assault category, but it is also a very controversial weapon, considering that many players are questioning the balancing properties of this particular weapon. The primary issue that many players have with this specific submachine gun is that it has been granted with a 60 and/or 120 round drum magazine. One of the largest negatives to this particular weapon is that it actually overheats in quick succession. Now, as a due result of this does mean that the player has to be very wary of how much ammunition that they're utilizing, considering that if the weapon happens to overheat in the midst of combat, it is definitely going to be their demise. But anyway guys, that's really all the information I have for you. Hopefully you found something in the video insightful and/or entertaining. But until the next episode guys, this has been NMO, and I'm going to be signing out guys. Peace!